Hey everybody, Matt Johnston here, and this is another in our series of videos on commercial lease clauses, terms, and their meaning. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about eminent domain. Now, for those of you who didn't take constitutional law, eminent domain is the power of the government to seize private property for governmental or public use. Now, typically that public use includes things like schools, roads, hospitals, things of that nature. But according to the Supreme Court in the Kelo decision that goes back into the early 2000s, government can seize property in order to maximize tax revenue. We can have a conversation about that particular decision at some other time. But an eminent domain proceeding, as it applies to a commercial lease, is something that needs to be considered when you are working with your commercial lease. Typically, the eminent domain proceeding clause is quite long. It's very detailed, lots of information in there. But the thrust of it is that if you are the tenant, you're screwed, sort of. Eminent domain proceedings, they compensate the landlord or the owner of the building. They don't compensate tenants for the loss of their tenancy. So if a building that you are leasing space in is seized by eminent domain, that means that you are out of the space. You're not going to receive any compensation for your lost business, your lost space, relocation costs, or anything along those lines. You are simply out. Now, to be fair, this is a very low probability event. Modern planning, city planning and county planning, those folks are often thinking 10, 12 years in the future. And so when a development or a new building is put in, those folks have already considered road layout, infrastructure needs, and school and hospital needs. They've thought about that. So new buildings, modern buildings that have been put in the past 15, 20 years, the chances of an eminent domain proceeding seizing those properties is very, very remote. Even in older properties, it's not going to be a likely occurrence. In fact, in my 15 years of practice as an attorney, I can't remember a single property around where I live being seized by eminent domain for the purposes of public use and seizing commercial properties. Quite frankly, commercial properties are more valuable than residential properties, so the seizure of a building by eminent domain is pretty remote. But if it does happen, you, the tenant, are out. Now take heart though, because an eminent domain proceeding is not like something that happens, the government comes in and says, hey, we're seizing this property today and you're out tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. These things take months, often years to complete, and that gives you, the tenant, some time in order to get out of your space. What you want to make sure is happening in your eminent domain clause is that there is no early termination. So if your building is going to be seized by eminent domain and you find a comparable space somewhere else, you want to be able to get out of your current lease without penalty. Penalties usually include you are going to be responsible for rent while you're out of the building and the landlord is trying to relet the premises. Early termination may include other kinds of fees. But if there's going to be an eminent domain seizure, you want to be able to move your operation in as reasonable a manner as possible. Now, the landlord's not going to compensate you for relocation like we talked about back in the last video, but the landlord should be letting you out of your lease. Now, some eminent domain proceedings, some places, there may be some proceedings in which the tenants of a space may be compensated by the government. And in many eminent domain clauses within a commercial lease, that payment or that benefit that's provided by the local government is and belongs to, according to the lease, to the landlord. So you may want to think about how you go about negotiating that. So it's one thing for the government to provide assistance in moving, that should be yours as the tenant. But if there's some sort of award for the value of the property, that is going to belong to the landlord, or at least the landlord is going to claim it. Oftentimes, eminent domain clauses will also say that you cannot bring an action against the landlord for things like a share of the payment that the landlord is going to get from the government or similar sorts of claims. But you do want to be able to reserve your rights to get out of the lease at an appropriate time. So the eminent domain proceeding, very low probability event, probably less than 1% chance that it's going to happen. But if it does, you want to understand what your rights are. Finally, we really enjoy, or I really enjoy making these videos, and we hope that you're getting something out of them. I really would appreciate it if you could subscribe. You can click the subscribe button. I think it's on this side, might be on this side, one of these two places. And hit that little bell that's down there. That little bell will notify you when we have new video content up. In the meantime, please check out some of our other videos talking about commercial leases. And if you have any questions about commercial lease, one that you're renting or one that you are the landlord, give us a call and we're happy to work with you and work up a lease that will satisfy your needs. In the meantime, I hope everybody stays safe out there and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.